What's up, y'all? So 28-0, 22 knockouts. Errol Spence Jr. confronts 37 wins, 21 knockouts, 3 losses. Danny Garcia, and he checks him for his mental health excuses and the reason for why he lost and didn't perform that well in that fight. These are some of the tweets that he said too. People trying to figure out how they're going to pay the mortgage or rent every month, etc. Like I said, I don't give an F about none of that. And I don't care who think what about what. Freak, I care about a rich dude being depressed. I'm sure my eldest felt worse than me. My parents and kids. Well, those are the other 2 comments and I responded. But yeah. And, in this world, man, there is so much happening, poverty rates, ever since 2020, poverty rates have raised a substantial amount. According to statistics, the poverty rate in America increased by 1%, an entire 1% compared to the year previous, or 0.9% to be exact, ever since 2019. So while Danny Garcia was more financially stable, people were actually dealing with poverty. And speaking of such, there are many countries that are suffering with poverty as well. I wouldn't say that's like a valid, I wouldn't say like, oh, you can't complain about your life or you can't blame mental health for a lot of things, but as much as I can say that, you're still a very fortunate individual. But this is not about that. This is not about that at all. This is not about that. Even if you're still a fortunate, because this is what a lot of people say, even if you're still a fortunate individual, that doesn't make you more better or more worse than anyone else. You can still deal with mental health problems, whether if you are rich or not. You can. I was watching a Fresh and Fit podcast before, and they were like, aren't you financially stable? Then you have no reason to be depressed. That's absolutely nonsensical and lousy. That's a lousy excuse. But to stay on topic, would you consider this an excuse though? Like, I would consider it. I would consider it a reason. I would consider it an excuse to an extent because, Errol Spence was already dealing with a car crash. He almost died. Errol Spence was on the verge of death, and he came back to beat you in a fight when you weren't on the verge of death. Maybe not from a physical standpoint, maybe a mental standpoint, who knows? But he definitely, Errol Spence on the surface definitely had the worst issues during 2020 because he damn near died. He was still recovering, and he was still in recovery. Errol Spence has this mentality of like, I don't care about none of that weak stuff, because Danny Garcia was talking about mental health, saying mental health really got him for that Errol Spence fight. I consider it a valid excuse because I feel like he did lose. I feel like it's a valid excuse. I feel like it's a valid reason, but compared to what Spence had went through, that's not a very valid reason because Spence went through a lot more from a physical standpoint. And probably even from a mental standpoint too, because he had PTSD after that crash. Gosh, even if Danny Garcia wasn't in the game and he had to take a break, compared to what some of these other fighters have gone through, you could consider it an actual excuse. While this person may be dealing with mental health problems, people are indeed struggling to pay their mortgage and their rent every single month. It's an actual struggle that people got to deal with all the time. Some of them may have kids. Some of them may be in a lot worse financial positions because they're just trying to grind every single day. Like, for a lot of people, it's a struggle out here. Most definitely a struggle, People living paycheck to paycheck all day. Don't help when you got kids, too. Definitely don't help, man. Danny Garcia's father, they were both dealing... Danny Garcia was exclusively speaking about how he was dealing with many mental health problems. And, how do you know that Errol Spence wasn't dealing with mental health problems as well? He just came off of a crash. His career could have been potentially over. He had a torn retina that could have potentially jeopardized his entire boxing career. Like, that is some serious stuff to deal with, man. That is some serious stuff. I understand Errol Spence was undefeated and that mentally keeps you up. But even still, man, But even still, that's real. That's facts. That's real. You know, there's nothing wrong with Danny Garcia's victory either. Danny Garcia did a phenomenal job in the fight. He outboxed Jose Benavidez. Very good. Won the fight. It wasn't no majority decision. It was a unanimous, in my opinion. I understand he looked like a shell of himself in the Errol Spence fight. But I kind of feel like if they were to fight anytime, that would be the exact same result, basically. I don't think it would change. I think, like, this is a unanimous decision victory I expected back in 2020. Like, I expected Spence to beat Danny Garcia like this, in this exact way. I was like, okay, it's going to be a 116-112, 116-112, and 117-111 probably by all three of the judges. And that's exactly what it came out to be. I just think Danny Garcia plateaued. He may do better like in another division, maybe like 154, but I think if they all were to come up, he'd still have the same losses. He would still lose the same way. Maybe even to Keith Thurman again in a rematch. I don't know. You know, anxiety, depression is a real thing. It's a very real thing. It's a really important thing to contact, you know, and speak about and stuff. But, you know, as much as people can say Danny Garcia was going through mental health stuff, as much as people can say that, Errol Spence was going through some crazy mental stuff. He just came off of an accident. He almost died. His career was almost over, bro. PTSD while on the road, man. Crazy stuff like that. Like getting hit by a car and almost dying and potentially being on like that close to the verge of death is not a walk in the park, man. It's not a walk in the park at all. You know, everyone, when it comes to Tyson Douglas, wants to talk about how, you know, Tyson was not being himself, didn't have his trainer, was sipping, you know, going to parties and stuff. First of all, he wasn't even going to parties during that Buster Douglas fight. He was smashing maids in his hotel room. He couldn't even go out anywhere. People were speaking about how he was doing all types of stuff, not paying attention, not being dedicated. Wow. As an excuse for him losing that Buster Douglas fight. But did you guys freaking know that Buster Douglas' mother died? He had the flu, and he was still making weight, still staying active, still getting ready to fight. And he was one crazy underdog. He was one crazy. I'm not gonna pull up the stats right now, but he was a significant underdog, a gigantic underdog. And he turned all the odds on everyone's butt or everyone's faces. That's serious. You know, that's serious. People to this day say, oh, Buster Douglas, you know, or people to this day still say, oh, Mike Tyson was off this. He wasn't himself in this fight. Buster Douglas was not himself. He was going through crazy mental stuff. His mother just died. Mike Tyson's died. Mike Tyson's mother died before that. But Buster Douglas was a crazy underdog. His mom died. He had the flu. He was at a really bad fever. Like, all three of those factors could break someone, could break anyone, could just make them collapse like a pile of blocks or bricks. It could just make them just fall down and just be like, I'm done with this. When he got dropped, he couldn't have got up, you know? He could have just stood down there, could have just laid down like, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna get my paycheck and get over with. But no, he still kept fighting. Then he got the stoppage. Do you know how legendary that win was for him? That was like one legendary win, man. And it's how ridiculous and how like crazy the odds were against him. The odds were super against him in that fight. The odds were crazily against him, man. Because of how much he was going through at that time. Number one, nobody believed in him. His mother's the only one who believed in him, basically. His father thought about, you know, ditching him as a fighter in reality. Like, there was so much on the line that happened. And the crazier part was Mike Tyson went from being an undisputed champion to, you know, not being one. He had to start from scratch all over again. He, you know, went to prison. He had to deal with all that nonsense. And looking back on the situation with Danny Garcia, I would say Errol Spence's situation was a lot worse on the surface, especially for what he was going through at the time. So I would consider Danny Garcia's reasons as a valid excuse, but also it's still an excuse nonetheless. Like, to be honest, like when it comes to that mental health stuff, I'm not really trying to hear that. I'm not. You can speak about your mental health, but I'm sure you went through plenty of pressure on your other fights on many occasions before. I'm sure you dealt with a detriment of your mental health in time too, as well. Like, so let me know your opinions in the comment section. How do you feel about the situation? Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, man. All right, thank you for watching. Bye.